Hey, what's up guys? Shamrocked here with a dungeon guide for you. This is for the Dawnbreaker dungeon, which is one of the new dungeons in the War Within expansion. So if you're not looking for new content and you sort of don't want to spoil that stuff, this is not the video for you. But if you're looking to sort of get a leg up on, how these dungeons are going to run and, maybe getting some quick tips so that when the season does start, you're sort of like already hitting the ground running, this is probably a good place to start. So this dungeon I actually really enjoyed. I thought it was a lot of fun when I first played it, and it's really challenging. Like as a healer check, it's just very, very punishing, which you'll see in different parts of the dungeon. It has some really tough bosses, and then the trash is like nothing to scoff at either. So anyways, yeah, I think it's a lot of fun, and it's a nice short dungeon too. It's only a 30-minute timer. So before we get into the actual dungeon, I'm just going to go over some of the talents that I chose. I'm not going to go over all of the talents. I'm just going to point out the talents specific to this dungeon that I would pick. If you're interested in like an overall talent build guide, I did post one yesterday, like concerning the totemic tree. And I've also been posting some other just like general resto shaman guides over the past few weeks. So if you're interested in the playstyle, the rotation, and just general builds without even looking at the hero talents, just go check those out. Okay, so for the Dawnbreaker, some key points that you need to take. First would be improved Purify Spirit. There are a lot of nasty curses in this place that will really chunk your group down. Thankfully, most of them are interruptible, but it's inevitable that some are going to get off. So having your curse dispel is really important here. Next, you're going to want to run Seasoned Winds. So Seasoned Winds, it's a new talent that we have since the War Within rework. It makes it so every time you interrupt a spell, you get a 15% damage reduction on that spell school for 18 seconds, which is a long time and a really big damage reduction. And it actually stacks up to 2 times. So you can end up having 30% DR. So in this dungeon, most of the casts are shadow. So every time you interrupt, you get that DR, and it can be definitely life-saving considering the dots that get put on you throughout the dungeon, which are all shadow damage. So this is like a really, really nice talent to have in this place. It'll help you survive quite a bit. The only other talent I think I would point out as being sort of utility-wise really important in this dungeon is the Refreshing Waters, which makes it so your healing surge is 25% more effective on yourself. The dots that happen during the trash after the first boss really are like, you need to have a really, really good single target healing. And this is just going to help. So when you get that dot on yourself, you're going to be able to keep yourself alive without expending too much mana. And then the only other thing I'll point out is that there's really not any need to take Windrush Totem. It's more of a nice to have. Same with Gust of Wind in this dungeon. Because the bosses are pretty scary and they're pretty big healing checks, I think you should rather go into Earth Elemental. And then what I would actually probably do as well, if I wasn't concerned about punching every single little tiny bit of DPS I could out, I would take a point out of Fire and Ice and I would put it into Primordial Bond instead. And that's just going to make you a little bit extra tanky during those bosses as well. On the right side, the only talent I would really point out is probably Master of the Elements. This is going to make your healing surges a lot more powerful if you're able to weave in some lava bursts with this talent. And trust me, like I said, because of the dots that go out in the second area, it's just going to make your life a lot easier if you have this talent. And then lastly, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about this one. So you could either take Spouting Spirits or Current Control with this build. I think in this dungeon, Current Control is probably better because due to the AoE group damage that goes out on the second and third boss, having another healing tide totem is just going to make your life a lot easier. Spouting Spirits is also amazing though, so like really I think you could take either one and you'll probably be okay. But I think in terms of like having the most throughput you possibly can and being able to really have a cooldown for each and every single damage window on those tough bosses, Current Control is probably the way to go. However, for this actual dungeon guide, I'm pretty sure I took Spouting Spirits. I did not take Current Control, but after having played it, I think I would recommend Current Control instead. Okay, and that's it. So with all of those talents, let's get started on the actual dungeon itself. All right, so this is once again the Dawnbreaker dungeon, one of the new ones in the War Within. I really like this dungeon. It's one of my favorites. Actually, a lot of the new ones are my favorites, but this one is cool. It's very unique. I think the style choices they made are cool. Like the story beats are nice, and I'm actually interested to see like what this story ends up being in the actual game because I'm not exactly sure. You kind of get the snapshot of what it's going to be, playing through it. So It's really neat because you kind of start on this big ship and you have to save the ship, and then you know, fly down and save a town, and then just fly back up, and it's, yeah, it's really cool. So anyways, running into this first pull, usually we found that we're not going to lust this. This group's actually a pug, but I have tried this dungeon a few times. Yeah, so this pull is too small to lust, but you're going to jump in here and you're going to have a few things to worry about. First is the Ritualist, the Tormenting Ray, which you see right now. It's going to target 2 people as like a channel, and it's just going to channel like a big dot on them that's going to chunk them pretty big. So just make sure that you're focusing those people. Have a health pot handy, as you see right there. I probably would have died if I didn't pop my health pot there. So the dot does tick pretty hard. Otherwise, the Shadow Mages are going to be casting random bolts as well as curses at people, so just make sure you're interrupting when you can. And with the Seasoned Winds talent, if you get the dot on you, the channel, and you're able to interrupt during that, it's going to help you not take as much damage, which is nice. Okay, running into the second pull, so this is the one that you're probably going to use Lust on, and it's pretty much the exact same as the first pull. The only difference is that you have a commander in there. And the commander is just going to cast something that's like it's called like a howl or terrifying something. And it's going to just do like a big AoE on the group. So it's important to interrupt. However, it's not going to kill you at this level. If you get high enough with a key, though, it's probably something that will wipe your group. So just be aware of that. Otherwise, you have the same abilities. You're dealing with another Ritualist, so you're going to have the Tormenting Ray coming out on 2 people. And then you're also going to have the Shadow Mages casting as well. And so in case you didn't see, that was called Abyssal Howl. That's the one you have to worry about from the commander. Okay, so once this pull is over, I would advise, this is actually a good moment because you can't mount up right away, but it does take you out of combat. So this is a good spot to take a nice drink. I would also say during these first 2 pulls, use any cooldowns that you have to. Like don't worry about saving your cooldowns. As long as you have like 1 for each of the ships coming up, then you should be fine. And you don't really need any for the first boss. The first boss is not difficult. So yeah, just use your cooldowns liberally. Just do what you have to do. So once you finish that second pull, you're going to have to save 2 ships that are flying off to the side. This is the first one. I mean, you can go to either one first. So this one has 2 melee guys and 1 caster, as well as the Web Mage. All right, so the Web Mage and the caster are just going to cast bolts and stuff at people. So interrupt them when you can. And then the Web Mage is also going to cast Bursting Cocoon, which is this circle you see on myself right here. And that's going to tick for a small amount of damage over time and then do like a big giant burst of damage at the end. So just make sure you save a defensive for that big burst at the end. And if anybody else gets it, a good strategy as a Resto Shaman is to put Earth Shield on that person so that they get the 6% DR. And make sure you also have Ancestral Vigor on them as well, and anything else that you can do to help them survive. Which, you know, is in addition to making sure they're topped up by the time that dot expires. Otherwise, yeah, make sure you're kicking the bolts and the curses and all that stuff because it really can hurt. This is the easier of the 2 pulls. The next pull has 2 casters, 1 melee, and the Web Mage. So you're dealing with extra curses and extra bolts. It can get a little bit oppressive if the group is not interrupting the way that they should be, or, you know, dealing with that. All right, but it's basically the same thing. And like I said, the Web Mage is going to be putting that cocoon on people as well. So just make sure you're ready for that. Using Downpour in order to get an extra little HP burst on them as well is nice. If you have any trinkets that put a shield on people, that's nice as well. It's actually one of the current ones that I'm running. Yeah, so what you want to do, if you watched my last video on the totemic video, all of these, pretty much every single pull going into this, including the bosses, you can just sort of do the Surging Totem rotation for Totemic, which is really nice. It's going to be, you know, drop your Surging Totem, go into Cloudburst to get that Chain Heal out that's going to put Earth Living Weapon on the group, hit your Downpour so everybody gets a nice 10% HP increase, and then just do your regular healing while Cloudburst is down, and pop it when you need it. And that's basically going to be like your bread and butter throughout the entire dungeon as a Totemic Shaman. And it's really cool because although that general rotation is the same, when you add in different cooldowns and different spells, you know, in the gap between Downpour and when you pop your Cloudburst Totem, it's just gonna, it's a really nice playstyle, I find. So running into this boss. So going into this boss, she's pretty easy. She only has a few abilities. One is called Obsidian Beam, which you're seeing right now. This is like the main ability. It's going to put 3 lines out up until the intermission, at which point after that it's going to put 4 lines out. So just, yeah, all you have to do is as it rotates, just make sure you don't get hit by it. The other ability she does is called Shadow Burn, or Burning Shadows, and that's going to put a dot on somebody, a dispellable dot. And so once you dispel that, it's going to put a healing absorb shield on the entire group, which you're seeing right now. So make sure that once you dispel that, you just get the group healed as much as possible to get rid of those shields ASAP. And then finally, you have the Collapsing Knight ability, which is this ability here with the circles. She's just going to target 2 people and put a circle down on them. If they don't move out of the way, like immediately, it is going to chunk them for big bursts of damage the longer they stay in there. So just be ready for that. So all of these abilities on their own really aren't that bad, but when you combine them together, they do create some problems, right? So if you get the Collapsing Knight on you while you have the Health Absorb Shield, and you stay in there for a few seconds, you're likely going to die because you have the health absorb on you and it's doing a lot of damage. The main danger here though is the Obsidian Beam with these Collapsing Knight circles, right? So if the tank doesn't move the boss away from the Collapsing Knight circles and you get caught in a bad spot, which you see I actually do at one point here, you're unable to dodge the beams without running through the circle, which is obviously painful. At 50%, she's going to do this big ability called Darkness Comes, where she basically explodes the ship, kind of. So you have to get on your mount and just fly away, and you fly around the ship until it's done, and then once it's done, you can fly back onto the ship. So and then it's rinse and repeat. So the only difference in this part is that you're having that extra beam for the Obsidian Beam for part 2. And it does appear that the beams start to move a little bit quicker. However, I don't know, it's not so quick that it's like crazy. As long as you're not in a bad spot, you're going to be fine. And then just some weird Resto Shaman bugs here. Your healing rain throughout the entire first area, so on any of these ships, is not going to it's not going to do any damage to anything. And this is a weird problem with a lot of abilities actually. So I know mages have like an orb that they use that doesn't work properly on these ships. I know if mages blink, they die in this area, which is weird. But and here, by the way, here, this is what can happen. So if you get stuck in a bad spot, you may have to run through the circle. Running through the circle is always better than getting hit by the beam. The beam will one-shot you, the circle won't. So if you do need to run through a circle, that's probably where I would save my defensive and just pop that and you should be fine. The beam doesn't last very long, thankfully. It's only like 5, 6, maybe 7 seconds. So, you don't have to survive long if you do get caught in a bad spot. All right, and then once she hits 1%, the fight is over. She's going to do the big darkness cast again, and she's basically going to die from that. So you can just get on your mount and fly away. Also, you'll see those gold orbs that happen during the intermission. Those just give you vigor. The dungeon journal does seem to indicate that they are supposed to maybe give you some sort of buff or help you survive, but currently they don't. All they do is just give you vigor while you're flying around. So don't worry about collecting them all or anything. So once she dies, all the trash in this area is going to spawn. This area is interesting, and I think for higher keys, this trash area is what's going to make this key probably one of the hardest, especially on pugs, just because the amount of interrupts required, the dots that go out, the AoE abilities that happen, it's all very overwhelming, especially pack by pack, it's not so bad. So on a key like this tank was actually pulling very safe. I'm a little surprised we timed this key actually, just because he was pulling pretty slowly. But once you're on higher keys, you will need to pull some of these packs together in order to time, especially for title level keys. And that's going to make this area really, really hard, just because the manifested shadow ads that are in some of these packs put out a nasty dot on people that lasts 10 seconds. And so you're usually pulling 2 or 3 of those when you're doubling up the pulls. And so that, in addition to everything else, just makes it very hard. If you don't kill them fast enough, they also do this massive AoE ability as well. It's like a channeled AoE. So if they double up doing that and then dots are out, it's crazy. So right now we're fighting the pack with 2 manifested shadows, and you can actually see myself and the warlock have the dot at the moment. And then once it goes away on us, you're going to see them go out once again. So now me and the demon hunter have it. So it's this area requires a ton of single target healing, and that's why I said at the beginning it's really important to spec into Master of the Elements here, as well as the talent that makes Healing Surge 25% more effective on yourself. And because of this, if you feel like your tank is safe, don't be afraid to swap around your Earth Shield onto people who need it. And also be very liberal with your cooldown. So for instance, while those AoEs were going off, it's called Dark Throws by the Manifested Shadows. I just threw down a Spirit Link there just to keep our group nice and safe. You also, like I said, it's very oppressive on mana just because of all the healing surge that you have to spam. So make sure that your tank is allowing you to drink. But also, if you're using your cooldowns to help, augment your healing, it's going to just be a little bit easier on your mana, and you're not going to have to drink as much. So just keep that in mind. The point of this area, the area of trash after the first boss, is you have 3 lieutenants that you have to kill before you can engage the next boss. And so you basically fly down to this village. It's being attacked. You're saving it from the 3 lieutenants, and then the main guy. I actually don't know how to say his name. I think it's Anubikaj. But yeah, so he actually pats around this little town. So you have to be careful too, because he's very easy to pull accidentally. That's actually my one problem with this dungeon, design-wise, is I think it's very claustrophobic. I think it's very easy to accidentally pull packs that you don't want to. Especially if you haven't done this dungeon before and it's your first time seeing it, it's very easy to accidentally like backstep or backpedal into something. So just be really aware of that when you're running this dungeon. Just your group should try to stay nice and close together, which is actually kind of nice for a totemic shaman, because that means people are they're kind of forced to stand in your killing range in the melee area. So you can just put that down and it's going to help everybody out. So this is the first lieutenant that we're fighting here. All 3 lieutenants put out a dot. It's kind of like what the Manifested Shadows do. I think it's a little bit more powerful. So make sure you're spamming single target healing into the person who gets affected by that. And then this first lieutenant is actually the easiest one. They just do like a tank slam that will fear any DPS that are caught in it. So the tank will usually move out. DPS just have to make sure they avoid that circle, and then they will not get feared. And then as long as the tank has some sort of defensive, they should be able to survive it fine. And as you can probably guess, the boss that we're about to face will have all 3 of the distinct abilities that the lieutenants have. So the first ability that it will have is this tank slam that you guys saw. All right, and what can be really annoying about these packs is that they can put a dot on somebody right before they die, and then you have to go to the next pack, but you still have to heal this dot. So people who are not thinking about it will mount up and fly away with the dot on them, and they'll just die. So be careful with that as well. Any pack that you pull that doesn't have a Manifested Shadow is way easier than a pack that does. So I think, but it's tough because the Manifested Shadows give like a ton of percentage. They give really good count considering how quickly they die. They don't take a whole lot to kill. So I don't know how this is going to shape out to be, because in higher keys, you're obviously going to want to do what is the most efficient in terms of count, but you're also going to want to do what's safest, right? Because those Manifested Shadows really hurt even on a 12, which, although not a low key, it's definitely not what title keys are going to be. Title keys will probably be like 14, 15, 16 at least, right? So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I feel like a route that can, the most efficient route while also avoiding the most of these shadows if possible, is probably going to end up what happens. Especially pulling these shadows with a mini boss makes things very, very difficult. So the tank that I normally run with, we've been trying out some of the more crazy pulls just in anticipation of like that is what you're going to have to do. And it gets really, really rough. So this is just a pug group I was with, and the tank, like I said, was taking it nice and slow. And thankfully we did time it. I think we timed it with under a minute left, so it was somewhat close. But it was way easier just doing it this way, where we kind of just pulled, one pack at a time and just kept it nice and easy. Okay, so after this pack, we are probably going to fly over to the next lieutenant, so the second one. This guy just does a channeled AoE in addition to putting the dot out on people. And it's actually a pretty scary AoE as well, so just be ready for it. Make sure you have at least 1 or 2 cooldowns going into this guy, because you may need them. And you're also fighting him with 2 tacticians, so just be careful of these frontals that are going to come out as well. But thankfully, no Manifested Shadows with this guy. So there you go. I think it's called Shadowy Decay. That is going to just do a lot of damage on people. And also, if you're wondering why that guy died, there's 2 slimes that kind of pat around this house, and it's very easy to accidentally pull them when you pull these guys. So if your tank doesn't pick those slimes up right away, then they'll probably just attack somebody else and they'll die. So just be aware of that. So if you have a personal, make sure you save it for when you have the dot and the AoEs going out. So I have 2 personals up, so I'm an idiot for not using a personal there. However, I did at least use a health bot, so thankfully that saved me. But yeah, I 100% should have just popped Astral Shift there. I was probably distracted by something. And then, make sure, because we now have like this cool raid buff, that if people die and come back, you're putting that raid buff back on them as soon as you can. I suggest getting a weak aura that, so you can see right there above my health frames, I have that red thing that glows red when the buff isn't on everybody. It still doesn't save me from like not remembering to put it on people all the time, but it does help. And then, if you're too busy healing, obviously they can wait, but that will help you if people die and come back. But yeah, this lieutenant is hard, but because the pool is so small, it's not that bad. And then on the right, you can actually see the boss patting by. So like I said, he kind of pats around the entire village, so it's very easy to accidentally pull him. And then finally, we're going to go to the last lieutenant area. So your tank can either pull this pack with the lieutenant, which is very hard. This lieutenant is difficult as well. Or you can pull this pack by itself and then do the lieutenant afterwards. So this lieutenant coming up is going to cast, and like I said, if you've been following, the lieutenants cast what the boss is going to cast. So far we have the tank slam that fears people, and we have that shadowy decay, which is the group wide AoE damage. So the boss is going to do both of those abilities, as well as what this upcoming lieutenant is going to do. So this upcoming lieutenant is going to cast something called Dark Orb. It's going to target somebody, and you have like 3 seconds to sort of aim the direction it's going to be launched in. And then once he launches that orb, depending on where it explodes, it's going to do more or less damage to the group depending on how far away it is. So if you accidentally aim it like at the wall where the group is standing and it hits there right away, it's going to one-shot the entire group and you're going to die. So you really need to focus on aiming the orb basically up the street or down the street. So you just need it to sort of go far away before it explodes. Even if it goes like infinite distance, it will damage the group when it explodes. So just be careful. And because this lieutenant puts a dot on somebody, you're just, make sure you're giving extra attention to that person while the dark orb is happening as well. So this boss coming up too is probably one of the hardest bosses, I think, if not the hardest boss in terms of a healing check. So I just be ready for it. The first time you do it, it's probably going to be like a bit of a shock just based on how much damage it does. Thank God, I think there's actually a universe where they included this dot that all the lieutenants put on the boss fight as well. And if this boss put out a dot like that, it would just be impossible. Like, I don't even know what to say, because he just, the 3 abilities that he does by himself, the Tank Buster, the Dark Orb AoE, and then the group like channeled AoE, is just so much, and it all happens so fast. Like, they happen all together. Like, you're dealing with all 3 in quick succession 3 or 4 times throughout the fight. So anyways, here's the Dark Orb. We aimed it down the street, and then we move out of the way once it's the location, or the direction is locked, sorry. And then you just, like I said, give extra attention to whoever has the dot on them while the Dark Orb is going out. That's a perfect opportunity to use a personal ability, a personal defensive if you have one. And then if he casts the Dark Orb but then dies, thankfully it doesn't do any damage to the group. There's a really awkward bug right now where if you die during this pull and you release the release point is back up on the main ship, which is no big deal, but the Dark Orb can target somebody on the ship. So if they're on the ship and it targets them and they happen to be like in the direction that a wall was, it's going to kill the entire group. So if anybody dies on this pull, unless they fix that, you're going to have to wait to release until you see that Dark Orb has gone out. So this boss is going to be fought in a very specific spot. Normally this hill is where you're going to fight him, but it's tough because he pats around, so you have to make sure he's in a good spot. But anyways, you want to fight on this hill because you can aim the Dark Orb that he does up the hill or down the hill, which you can see going out right now, and it's not going to hit anything close by and kill people. So he's basically going to cycle through his 3 abilities. He's going to do his Dark Orb, his Terrifying Slam, and the Shadowy Decay. The Shadowy Decay does a ton of damage right away. Like, as you can see going out, that's insane. That's like ticking people for like 40% of their HP per tick. And it's only a 12. So this is just like insane damage. So just a caveat, this is like my 2nd or 3rd time seeing this boss. So you'll see it kind of takes me a second to sort of get the rhythm of it. But basically what I ended up doing towards the end is once the Dark Orb went out, I waited until that damage hit. And then that's when you drop your Surging Totem, your Cloudburst, and then you hit your downpour for this shadowy decay and pop a cooldown, and that's probably going to keep the group alive. And then you can, towards the end of the shadowy decay, you can just pop your cloudburst to top the group up, or if you're worried that somebody's about to die, you just hit your cloudburst as an emergency, and it should give people enough health so that the actual cast doesn't kill them. So I think I do it correctly for the third time. It just took me a couple of tries to get there. So here we go. Oh, he also does this thing called animate shadows. It's just going to spawn a few ads that do casts. So just make sure you're stunning and interrupting and knocking them up whenever you can, and then the group will kill them. So now we have our dark orb going out. And now we have shadowy decay, which I use a slink for. So you can see once again, like I did not do this rotation correctly. Like I should have not once, and to be honest too, like my boss, like it seems to be ability queuing, so the boss timers aren't really accurate. It's showing two abilities happening at the same time, so you're kind of just guessing at which one's going to happen. Like there, it said it was going to do animate shadows and dark orb at the same time, and then animate shadows came out and the dark orb timer sort of reset. So it's a little bit confusing. I'm sure that stuff will get sort of fixed up once they once all the add-ons and stuff get updated. So here we go. Dark. This is me doing it correctly this time. So dark orb damage goes out. I put down my surging totem. I put down my cloud burst. I hit my downpour just because I didn't want it to run out. And then here I'm just going to do, you know, the heals that I need to do. And if I needed to, I could have popped a cooldown there as well. But because I did my rotation properly, I didn't even need to. Surging totem with cloud burst in order to get earth living weapon on the entire group with the chain heal, and then downpour into whatever heals will pretty much be enough to save you from anything if you do it correctly. And you'll see, I thankfully do learn. So when we go into the last boss, once again, you'll see me doing that rotation quite a bit because it's quite powerful. Okay, and so now we're almost done the dungeon. Like I said, this is a nice and quick one. There's just one more trash ad, one more lieutenant that you have to do. So basically they've taken over the ship that you saved at the beginning again. So you now have to come and save it again. So this guy, the architect, if you remember at the very beginning of the dungeon, the ritualists would do that channel on two people. It's basically the same thing, except this time it puts a circle around those two people. So if anyone is standing too close to them, they will also take damage. But it's really the exact same thing as that. And then in between every channel cast, he's just going to summon some of the ads that you've been fighting throughout the entire dungeon. So really all you have to do is just make sure you're interrupting whenever you can, dispelling, decursing if anything like that goes off, and just making sure that your tank is topped for any of the ad tank busters that come out. A lot of these melee ads do it's like a charge or like a blitz or whatever, that sort of just, it's like a mini tank buster. So just make sure you're paying a little bit of attention to them at least. And also, if you have to use a cooldown here, don't be shy. The boss that's coming up has a pretty long intermission period where you're like flying to catch him. So most of your cooldown, like you'll gain a lot of cooldown reduction during that intermission. So you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, don't use all your cooldowns here. Obviously, you want at least one or two for this first phase of this boss. But like I said, don't worry about using one or two. So this boss is really cool. I think it's fun. And it does a lot of damage, but it's not too punishing. And yeah, so once again, keep in mind, this is my second time seeing this boss, and the first time I saw it was on like a 10 key, so the mechanics didn't really matter. So you'll see the first time the AoE comes out, I'm like not ready for it at all, and it does kill somebody just because I was like not prepared for the amount of damage it's going to do. But yeah, so this guy has a few abilities in phase 1. The most dangerous one is the erosive spray, which you're seeing right now. So this is going to be like a channeled pulsing AoE that's going to put a stack of a dot on people every time it pulses. So at the end, you're going to have 3 stacks. It's going to be doing quite a bit of damage to everybody as a dot afterwards. So you're just going to want to make sure you're using cooldowns or whatever to keep people up. The other ability he does is expel webs, which are just those swirlies on the ground you have to watch out for. And then he also does rolling acid, which he targets one person and they get a green line on them. And on the left or the right of that green line, you're going to see like a bit of like a green color. So it's out right now. You can see on the right side, it's like basically the green color is facing that way, and the waves are going to shoot out in that direction. So if whatever DPS gets that line, they just have to go to the side of the group that makes it so the waves are like already past the group and that they don't just like kill everybody, because they will one-shot you. And then throughout this phase 1, you'll see like bombs coming on the ground. So we pick up the bombs and we throw them at the dude. And once you throw 6 at him, you face him to the next phase. At which point you get on your mount and you chase him down. So just like the first boss, you're going to see these gold orbs come out. They don't give you a damage buff or anything. You don't get a prize for collecting them all, although you will hear that myth because it's already spreading. All they do is just give you vigor. So and I think they give the group vigor too. So like if one person gets it, then everybody gets the vigor that it does. Kind of like the Tindril boss from last expansion, if you were around there. So you're going to chase this guy down, and I don't know if you've been paying attention, but this scenery is really cool. They've done a great job with this zone. I think it just hits a really cool vibe. I don't know, there's something about it that I really enjoy. But anyways, you're going to chase him down to this platform, and then phase 2 is the exact same thing as phase 1, but with one added ability that I'll call out when you see it. Oh, and you do have to interrupt this guy when you get down here. So if you're like slow chasing him, I guess the point is that if he gets his cast off, you'll die. So rolling acid, same as we saw in phase 1. This is the new one. It's called Spinneret Strand. So he's going to target 2 people, and it's going to just do like a burst of damage on each of them, and it's going to put them in a cocoon, and they have to just like run out of the cocoon, and when they run far enough, it's going to just like snap the web for a small burst of AoE in the whole group. So he's just going to cycle through all of these abilities. Here we go, Erosive Spray. So cooldowns obviously should be saved for the Erosive Spray. That's like by far the most dangerous part of this boss. But once you get your rotation down, like I said, it kind of took me a few tries just because I hadn't seen this boss before in a capacity where it was actually doing damage to the group. But the easy rotation for this, just like all of the other bosses, is to do your Surging Totem into Cloudburst, into Downpour, into Standard Healing as the damage mechanic happens. And then what's nice about this boss is usually if you do that for the Erosive Spray, what happens is the healing from your Cloudburst, like when your Cloudburst is about to expire, it happens when the Spinneret Strands come out. So it's a nice way to like top the group up for that. And you'll see me do it perfectly like sort of towards the end of the fight when I finally get the hang of it. All right, even this time. So we have our Spinneret Strands go out and my Cloudburst. I think my Cloudburst went off like a second early there, but I'm pretty sure the timing was like perfect for this one. Yeah, so we have Surging Totem into Ascendance, into Cloudburst, into Downpour, into regular healing while Cloudburst is down. And then you're going to see that's going to be like a perfect top up for when the Spinneret Strands come out, which is right now. And voila, group is topped, easy peasy. So with your cooldowns and if you're playing Totemic with this rotation, this is also another boss that's perfect for Totemic because you're like everybody's kind of forced to stand in this little circle. So yeah, just use your cooldowns as needed, use your rotation, and you should have no problems with this boss. I think this boss is considered a bit of a healing check, but it's more forgiving than the second boss in the sense that even though the damage is high, it sort of happens a little bit more predictably, and it happens over a little bit more time, right? The shadowy decay that the second boss does just ticks like every 0.5 seconds for 40% of the group's health. It's just insane. So this guy's a little bit easier than that, but still definitely a healing check. And it remains obviously to be seen how this is going to be tuned on live for both of these bosses when the dungeon comes out. So as it stands right now, in my opinion, having tried all of the dungeons, this one is the most healing intensive by boss, and it's also the most healing intensive by trash if your tank is doubling up the pulls in the second area, which, like I said, once you get high enough in a key, like once you get the key level gets high enough, especially if you're pushing for title, that is just going to be a necessary evil, so you're going to have to learn how to deal with it. So just being able to have good single target healing is key in this dungeon. Being able to manage your mana properly, which is mostly done by just making sure you're a little bit liberal with your cooldowns and that you're not like saving cooldowns for anything, and you're using them as needed. But anyways, yeah, that's the Dawnbreaker. Like I said, really fun dungeon, really cool. I think it's going to be one that healers either love or hate. It kind of just depends on what kind of healer you are. And it's probably going to be a little bit harder for pugs this plays just because of the amount of interrupts and curse dispels and all that stuff. But yeah, real fun dungeon. So I hope you enjoyed this guide. I'll try to put another one out today with another one of the new dungeons that I've done, and you'll get to see some more Totemic playstyle. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.